Welcome back to the Humble Market Timer YouTube channel. Once again, if you enjoy the content, please like, comment, and subscribe. Today's video is on United States Antimony Corporation. This has been one of the hottest stocks in 2025, but could it potentially double even from here? Before I go any further, let me show you my disclaimer. Once again, these are my sole ideas, not investment advice. Now, US Antimony Corporation, also referred to as ticker symbol UAMY, they are most notably, they sell antimony, and they are the only antimony smelter in North America. So this is one of the few places in all of North America where you can get antimony. Now antimony is most notable. It's considered to be a critical mineral, and the reason why it's critical is because it's often used in a lot of military applications for ammunition. It's sort of like something they add to lead to make it harder so that it can create these armor piercing type of ammunition, and it's used in a lot of military and warfare type applications. So with all the things that are going on in the world today, it is a very critical mineral that not a lot of people know a lot about, but the US military and people involved in defense know and understand that antimony is a critical mineral. Most of antimony comes from China, and when they came down with all these restrictions regarding whether or not they would be delivering antimony to other places throughout the world, antimony became on the critical minerals list for the US, and as a result, the price of antimony has skyrocketed. Just to kind of give you an example of how much antimony has gone up, you can see here from this chart, the price has gone up about 5 times, from about 10K a ton to all the way to about 50K a ton within the last 6 months to a year. So the price of antimony has just skyrocketed, and a lot of it has to do with what the restrictions that China put on the US when we had our tariff conflict. So now that you know a little bit about antimony, let's look at the actual company, United States Antimony. Now here's a chart, a daily chart of UAMY, and as you can see, the stock started in late 2024 in that 70 to 80 cents range. And shortly after was when we started having the tariff issues potentially coming down that Trump has stated he's going to put on China. And you can see that the stock exploded from 70 to about 2.5 cents in probably about a month's time, or actually a little bit less than a month's time. So it just shows you the price of this company just skyrocketed almost overnight. And a lot of that had to do with the corresponding price of antimony. And even since then, you can see that this company stock has traded within a pretty tight window. I created a parallel so you can kind of see the uptrend that it is for the most part stayed pretty firmly in. And as of now, the stock has gone from as low, like I said, as about 70 cents back in December of 2024 to as high as about $5.50 now. So it has had a massive move in a very short period of time. And so the next question is, does this stock have further upside? it can get a little dicey when a stock has had a move this big to think that it could possibly move higher. But let's look and see what the technicals say regarding if that could actually be the case. Now, as I mentioned before, I said we have been trading within this parallel that's been pretty uniform. But one thing I wanted to point out is within this parallel from about April to now, there is a formation that has occurred that I talk about a lot on this channel, where you have shoulder here. This is a head. This is a shoulder. So you have, excuse the accuracy of my drawing, but you kind of get the gist of the idea. But you have a neckline here. You have two shoulders and a head. That's an inverse head and shoulders pattern, which tends to be a very bullish pattern when you're looking at it from a technical analysis standpoint. And as you can see, we have recently started to somewhat consolidate on the neckline, and then we broke past the neckline, and then we did a retrace back to the neckline, and then we bounced off that and we're heading higher. That tends to be what happens when you have a breakout of a key resistance and support level. You often will get a break, and then you get a retrace to kind of check back at that level to see if that level was as critical as it once was in that resistance and support level. And then if it is a strong break, you tend to get a move or a bounce off of that neckline after the retrace. And that is exactly what we have done. So the initial look of this chart, you see that we have an inverse head and shoulders setup where it has broken the neckline and we have retraced and we are headed back higher. That is a very bullish technical setup. And typically, get out of that. Typically, to kind of move this down, when you have that inverse head and shoulders, you take the neckline to the lowest part of the head, and then where you have the breakout, you take a measured move, and you can see the measured move is all the way to about 650, that area. So that's a pretty substantial move, even after it's already made a huge move. Now, before we want to say that this is completely a bullish setup, it also has a bearish setup to it as well, and I want to point that out. If you also notice here, we have an uptrending wedge pattern forming here that started back in June, and you can see that we have been really narrowing down on that uptrending wedge pattern. Now, uptrending wedge patterns typically, they generally are noticed as a bearish setup. About 70% of the time when you have an uptrending wedge pattern, it generally falls down out of the wedge pattern. That's what typically happens. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to always happen. As I said, there's about a 30% chance, generally speaking, that it can still break out of the neckline, out of the wedge pattern. So you have two conflicting things here, and I think when you have two conflicting things, particularly when you're unsure of how the market is about to shake out in the next few weeks or so, I think you kind of have to have a pause and kind of have to take a wait and see approach for what UAMY will do next before you try to make an estimation as to whether or not we will have further upside or if we'll actually finally have a breakdown after such a historic move. Just to kind of show you one other thing, this is the monthly chart of UMAY. As you can see, I've drawing a line to areas where we have had peaks in the past, all the way back to this is all the way back to the 1980s. So we're talking about a long time frame. But if you keep going from peak to peak, and if this continues to move higher, there is the possibility that we are in the process, if it can move higher, of hitting potentially another peak somewhere in the $7.50 to $8 range. And if we even have a break of that, you can see that we have an all-time high of about in that $10 price range. So this is a chart and a stock that has been on fire. And oftentimes things need to cool off a bit, but things haven't really slowed down regarding the tariff issues with China. And if things continue to be contentious and things really start to heat up, there is a possibility that we could see all-time highs in UAMY. But I think in the near term, you need to take a wait and see approach, see if we break up or down out of that uptrending wedge pattern. If we break higher, you could be in store for a move potentially into that from that $6.50 to the $8 range. Hope you like the video. If you like the content, please like, comment, or subscribe. Thanks for watching.